I meet and interview many leaders from companies large and small that have created corporate cultures that their employees want to love and don't ever want to leave. As a caring leader, you know that it's important to learn from each other and share what's working and what isn't. Hi, I'm Heather Younger, and in this video, I'm going to be recapping some stories or examples, 5 examples to be very specific, of great corporate cultures from within my network, but to be honest, within the world. And I'll also refer to some leaders who I interviewed on my podcast, this podcast, Leadership with Heart, as well. So let's get to it. The first company I want to be highlighting, which is not someone I've interviewed, but it's still within our sphere, is a company called Adobe. In 2012, Adobe replaced traditional annual performance reviews with a system called check ins. This approach emphasized ongoing, real time feedback between employees and managers, fostering this continuous development cycle and open communication. By eliminating those formal ratings, Adobe encourages a growth mindset and reduces the stress associated with annual evaluations. Just recently, I went to conduct a workshop for a company, and it's the government finance organization, and they're an association that helps people in government finance. And when I was there, one of the things they were really instituting was something very similar to Adobe, which is this idea of having it's performance reviews, but they call theirs check-ins as well. And they want to encourage a formal part and then informal things. They want to change how we see feedback and more as a gift than as something that's retribution. And they also decided to separate the pay and pay for performance, let's say, pay increases from the review or check-in process. Usually, when you pair those together, people then walk away almost like the dentist, where you have this negative feeling when you walk away, or when someone tells you got to go to the dentist, you start to get a lot of fear that comes up, and that's what happens with performance reviews. So by changing even the vernacular and calling them check-ins and making them feel more informal and giving the managers the right words to say in the processes to do, it makes it go by much easier. And actually, I was there to be training on active listening and showing them how to take the steps to listen even during their performance review process a lot more effectively than they do now. That is a culture of care. That is a great corporate culture. The second example I have is a company called Highspot. Highspot is basically has this thing called the most respectful interaction, which is a principle they created that ensures that all communications are conducted with utmost respect and consideration. This practice has cultivated an environment where employees feel safe to express their feedback and their ideas, even if they are different from the mainstream, which leads to enhanced collaboration and innovation inside the team. Now, if you've listened to me or watched any of my videos for any long period of time, you know that I believe deeply in creating safe spaces that people can tell their truth. If people don't have the place where they can tell their truth, they don't feel safe, trust is low, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Your organization is not going to reach a lot of different goals. So a good caring culture, a great culture, is one that sets up the ability for people to think differently about giving feedback, even if it's dissenting to the rest or to the mainstream. The third company I want to talk about is W.L. Gore and Associates. At W.L. Gore, they have this lattice type of thing they do. It's an organizational structure that eliminates traditional hierarchies, and it allows for employees to take on leadership roles based on expertise rather on title. For instance, when developing new products, teams self-organize, and then leadership energizes organically. So then it comes to the top, and you see people they don't have the titles, they just are able to come together and really promote this culture of empowerment and accountability. Now, I am not necessarily advocating for this idea of being self-managed completely, because I do think there's a role that a really good supportive manager plays. But there is this sense of giving power back to team members, this empowerment that we want to do for people. Often at work, people feel powerless, they feel hopeless and helpless. And so if we can put them in a position to feel like they are the leaders, irrespective of title, that they step up and they perform and they get the benefits and the recognition for that. That, in my mind, is the makings of a very good culture. The fourth company I want to talk about is Culture Amp. Now, I've been watching Culture Amp for quite a long time. They put on conferences about culture, and they have a software platform, and they bring people around these the concepts of culture. Culture Amp practices a culture first approach, and that's by involving employees in the decision-making processes. So during development of new features, cross-functional teams, they collaborate before they do that to ensure that there's a lot of diverse perspectives that are coming to the table before they make big decisions that impact customers and impact team members. This inclusive strategy, of course, not only enhances product quality, but it strengthens team cohesion. So I talk about this in my master class on team decision making. It's so important for people to feel bought in to changes that are happening, for decisions that are impacting them, their work, their customers, because they have an ownership in the customer experience too. And so if we include them, they feel bought in, innovation increases, collaboration just sparks are created, and it's a culture like Culture Amp that people don't want to leave. And the last organization I want to talk about is Zappos. Now, I have to say, I have been blessed enough to actually visit the Zappos headquarters. This is before Tony Hsieh passed away, so it's been some years ago. But they have been known for their culture for a very long time. Really, a culture that's kind of more loose, that has kind of the cool elements of what you think of as a cool culture. But what Zappos does is a little different. Is they offer a pay to quit program, where new employees are offered a financial incentive to leave after their initial training. This practice ensures, first, that those who are there are genuinely committed to the company's culture, the values, their customers, leading to a higher employee engagement and satisfaction. Think about that. If they take you through training and they're willing to pay you to leave because they're like, if we don't want you here, if you don't want to be here, right away, people's mindset is already going to be fighting to be inside that culture. You want team members so invested that they will scrape, they will fight to be there near you. That makes you more magnetic. That is a winning culture all the way around. I've worked with companies who got some of this right, and I've gotten had companies who didn't have a clue, right? Who just were there to check the box, just to see what they could do that was like similar to another company that was in the news. But discovering your own team and organizational identity is going to be critical, and making sure that, like, for example, prospective employees know what your identity is, your investors, your customers know what your unique identity is. The employees that are currently there, is it a magnetic culture where they know what you stand for, they know your identity, and they want to stay in it and they want to represent it? There are ways to make sure that these people know what your identity is. And I will dive into this idea of corporate identity for both internal and external customers, to both those that you serve externally and those you serve internally, in a future episode, a future video. But I just wanted to make sure that you know that you have to have that. So I'm giving you these examples. Examples are just that. But you don't want to just be a spinoff or a knockoff of some other brand. There are so many other smaller companies out there, leaders who even I interviewed on the podcast Leadership with Heart, to find out, to get to the bottom of what made them want to be so people centric, so culture, centric and people focused, and to see how their organizations, small, medium, large, evolved. I wanted to bring some that were more recognizable to you, and I'll continue to highlight some of those, obviously, through my interviews at some of these great leaders. But in this case, I just wanted you to have some great examples of how you can be this, like, leader, this culture, this team, this organization that can lead by example and build this magnetic culture that everybody wants to come to, that people don't want to leave, and that they want to go over and above for you and those you serve. Hopefully it was valuable. Take care.